This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Murray, joined as always on Thursdays with my partner in crime on VSiN Primetime, the one and only Matt Youmans joins me right now. Matt, we had a monster week of games last week, some surprising results. A mixed bag of results, I'll say, for the two of us, some ups, some downs. But here we go, week number 6. And this one, I felt like we had to search a little bit harder for some opportunities out there.
Yeah, last Saturday was a roller coaster ride. You're going to have that a lot of times within a season and within a Saturday. But it turned out okay last week. Could have been better. I was disappointed most in the Washington Huskies. And also a little bit disappointed in Georgia. Those were two plays I had that I lost with last week. I basically had a break-even Saturday, but those were two plays I liked that did not come through. And let's break down this week's best bets. Tim, this is going to be home dog week for me. Hopefully the dogs are barking here on the first Saturday in October.
Is that different than any other week, Matt?
Well, I mean, I've played a few favorites. I have played a few, not too many. But these are all home dogs. No road dogs here, Tim. It's home dog week. So hopefully the home dogs are barking. Let's put it that way.
All right, let's get into it with our biggest games of the week.
The main course.
Yeah, that's right. We call it the main course. You know, before you know it, Thanksgiving will be here, Matt. But I'm not rushing to Thanksgiving. Let's get to Halloween first. We still got a lot of college football. And let's go down to Florida. Last week, I thought Florida State was going to be in a primo look-ahead spot, and fortunately for us on the pod, Virginia not only covered the 7, they won the game outright, even though there were some shaky moments after Chandler Morris threw a couple of interceptions. But Florida State, after they beat Alabama, Matt, no doubt has been looking forward to this opportunity to take on Miami. They're 18th in the country. The Noles are taking on Miami, who comes in with that number 3 ranking by their name. This will be a primetime game, ABC, 7:30 Eastern. Right now, the betting market, Matt, sits at 4.5 at most spots. Couple of 4s out there, including Circa, total at 54.5.
I've got a couple of home dogs on the card this week I'm a little bit anxious about, and then Florida State's one of them here. I know our buddy Chris the Bear Felica, he's a Miami graduate. He's on the Canes. And I know a lot of people think this Canes team's going to roll through the rest of the schedule. I like the fact that Florida State lost to Virginia. I think that makes the Seminoles a little bit better bet here in this home game against the Hurricanes. Now, you got a rivalry game like this, and you got a home dog catching more than a field goal. I got to give it a serious look. And, hey, Tommy Castellanos has not played great at quarterback for Florida State lately. In fact, Tim, he's got 4 TD passes and 3 picks on the season. He is a running threat, and he's going to have to make some plays on the ground against this tough Miami defense. What I look at most here is do you trust Carson Beck and Mario Cristobal on the road laying this number in what's going to be a huge game in Tallahassee? I wouldn't trust laying the points on the other side, so I'm going to take him here with the Seminoles. And Tim, as the weeks go by and as Alabama goes to Georgia and wins, I think that Alabama win does look a little bit better for Florida State. Hey, if you can dominate Bama, you can hang within this number and have a shot to knock off the Hurricanes. So I'm playing Florida State.
You know, it's funny you mentioned you were happy that Florida State lost to Virginia. Our buddy, to reference him again, the Bear, Chris Felica, said Miami fans may not want to hear it, but facing Florida State off a loss is far more dangerous than if FSU won. Desperate, angry, motivated team out to save its season in a rivalry game against a team making its first road trip of the season. So to your point, Miami hasn't played a road game yet this year. They've had some big ones at home, played Notre Dame, played South Florida, played
Right.
Florida, but now first opportunity on the road here for the Canes. I didn't play this one yet, but I think I'll join you probably on Florida State catching the points. All right, let's get to the game prior to that on ABC, Matt. College game day headed to Tuscaloosa for Vanderbilt and Alabama. Yes, the Vanderbilt Commodores 5-0 for the first time since 2000, Matt. And they, in the look-ahead market, were a 13.5-point underdog, and now right now it is down to 10.5. This did get below 10 for a little bit this week, but it has got bumped right back up to 10.5. Last year, remember, Alabama beat Georgia, went to Vanderbilt, and lost as a 23.5-point favorite. Now, you can't imagine, Matt, this is a letdown spot for Bama, even though they're coming off of a very physical and massive victory on the road against Georgia.
Yeah, if you're Clark Lee and Vandy, you got to love the way Alabama's schedule sets up every year, right? Play Georgia and then play Vandy. This is exactly the time when you're the Commodores you want to catch Alabama. That said, Wes Reynolds of VSiN, I don't know if he talked about this on the podcast with you this week, but Wes had a phrase he used to use, and he would say, "It's a show 'em who's boss game," and that's when the big boy shows the little boy who's the boss. And I think Alabama might have that show 'em who's boss attitude in this game. Diego Pavia has been talking about smack. I don't know, Tim, if you heard it this week, but Pavia said, if we play our game, it won't be close. Okay.
I got the quote right here, man. This is what he told. This is what he told On 3 Sports. Quote, "We just got to play within the white lines. If we do that, if we play our game, it won't be close." Dude,
Come on.
what are you doing?
I don't know. Poking the bear, poking the elephant, the Crimson Tide. I love Vandy in the underdog role in most spots. Tim, I've got a bet on Vandy over 5.5 wins for this season. 5-0, it's looking pretty good. But what? Number 6 is not going to come here. This is one dog. This is a road dog. I'm not going to play this weekend. You know what? I was harsh in my criticism of Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, early in the season after the Florida State game. But I got to tell you, after watching him, he's improved. He's made a lot of improvements. He looks a lot better. So I actually kind of like Ty Simpson now.
Yeah, I actually, there are a couple, and we talked about this earlier this week, Matt. If you have the ability to bet at DraftKings or FanDuel, they keep their Heisman odds up during games. And after 2 touchdown drives, I grabbed Ty Simpson 17-1 to win the Heisman Trophy last Saturday night. A couple of little nuggets here regarding this game, Matt. Vanderbilt, as you mentioned, great in the underdog role since Van Wilder, a.k.a. Diego Pavia, got to Nashville. 10-2 ATS as an underdog. If you go back to his last season at New Mexico State, 5-2-1 ATS as an underdog. So 15-4-1 ATS as a dog. Incredible, Diego Pavia in that role. But, sometimes, Matt, we like to look at, all right, what was this game last year? What is it now? Last year, 23.5-point spread at Vanderbilt. This year, 10.5-point spread in Tuscaloosa. Right. So it's a massive adjustment here from what it was to what it is now, even the look-ahead game as well. Vanderbilt's strength of schedule, 88th. Alabama's strength of schedule, 4th. And how about this, Matt? Vanderbilt, this will be their second appearance ever on College Game Day. Alabama, this will be their 61st. So it's just kind of funny that we've got this showdown here in the SEC. I'm with you. I like Alabama here. I don't want to lay 10.5. So I'm going to do my first official money line parlay here on the podcast. I will put Alabama in a money line parlay, and I'll tell you who I paired them with a little bit later on. But wow, I do like Alabama. Nah, you like that? See, you got to wait around. But I do like Alabama.
Now I can't. I can't wait to get to the later part of the show where we find out the other half of the money line parlay. Can we fast forward to that? You know what? I like the idea of putting Alabama.
iTunes, you certainly can.
I actually like the idea of doing that because if I have a favorite that I like and I don't want to lay the number, I'll throw it on a money line parlay too. If I get a couple other. One or two other really strong favorites to pair it with where I don't want to lay the number. So that's actually a pretty good idea. Tim, great point by you. When you talk about the difference in the number from a year ago, you're losing 2 touchdowns, and this game's in Tuscaloosa, not in Nashville, right? You said last year the number's close to 24. Now the number's close to 10. You're losing 2 touchdowns, and it's a road game for the Commodores. So I don't think you're getting value in the number at all here.
No, I don't think you are. And look, Vanderbilt might be a popular dog too, as once again, to reference our friend Chris Felica for the third time in 10 minutes, maybe this is a dog with fleas in Vanderbilt. All right, one more game, Matt, and you've coined the phrase here on this podcast. Sometimes sports gambling can make you feel like a genius or a jerk. And I feel like this is the genius or jerk game of the weekend. Number 9 Texas at Florida, 3:30 on ESPN. Sunbelt Billy, very much on that hot seat, Matt. As we all know, he's a touchdown underdog at home against Texas, who is number 9, according to the pollsters, but certainly has to think this year has been rather disappointing. Also on deck, I don't think this is a look ahead, but it is worth noting, Red River's next for Texas, so they do get to play their arch rival Oklahoma next week at the Cotton Bowl. Texas laying 7 in Gainesville on Saturday, Matt.
Tim, I'm calling this game Sunbelt Billy's last stand. And if he doesn't win this game, he's going to be done for all intents and purposes. If he wins this game, he's going to have a little bit of life going forward. If he can knock off Arch Manning and the Longhorns in the swamp. I'm on Florida here. I know what I'm signing up for with Sunbelt Billy, but I'm willing to do it. I like Florida as a home dog. I'm not convinced that Texas is there yet. I just don't. I don't believe it. After wins over San Jose, UTEP, and Sam Houston. And by the way, Arch Manning, cool it on the taunting of the Sam Houston defensive players, okay? You got clowned by Ohio State, and you got something to prove here. And you didn't prove jack against Sam Houston. So I'm not convinced that the Longhorns have got it figured out. Tim, those were 3 home games against 3 weak opponents. And now you got to go back on the road to one of the toughest places in college football to play. And Florida +7, I think there's a lot of value in this number. Dallas Wilson's going to be back in the Florida offense. And for those who don't know, 6'3" freshman receiver is a big-time player. He had 10 catches for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns in the spring game. And he's going to, I think, put a bolt of jolt of electricity into this offense for the Gators. They averaged 11 points per game in those last 3 losses: South Florida, LSU, and Miami. But Dallas Wilson's a difference maker. He could be a difference maker for DJ Lagway, who's really struggled. So I'm going with Florida +7 here. I was waiting. It was number 6.5 early in the week. I said, when this goes to 7, I'm taking it. I don't care. Maybe Sunbelt Billy screws it up, but I know what I'm signing up for, and I'm still playing the dog here.
Well, the good news is it isn't a noon Eastern game. At least we got that going for us. Right. But we've had a couple of poor performances from a betting standpoint with our guy Sunbelt Billy so far this year. But I'm with you. This will be a common play. I took the 7 as well. Desperation spot for Florida. And yes, the offense worries me, but you got a week to prepare, extra week to prepare. As you alluded to, Dallas Wilson's going to play. For Texas, they've got some injuries. C.J. Baxter, doubtful, according to the injury report this week. Wisner, the other running back, is questionable. Emmett Mosley, the transfer from Stanford, questionable as well. Texas very well may have the best defense in the country, Matt. I put up a tweet earlier this week of the comparison of Florida's offense versus Texas's defense, and there's a lot of red for Florida's offense and a lot of green for Texas's defense. And, we've seen the total get smacked pretty hard down to the under. A little bit of over money actually coming into the market on Thursday here, but I'm with you. I'm going to take the 7 with Florida here and just hope that Florida's pass defense, which has been really strong this year, we saw them really play some pretty good defense against LSU, which maybe doesn't look as good now. But even against Miami, I thought until the end when the dam finally broke. So I'm with you. A common play for us. We'll be taking the Gators here. Sunbelt Billy. Sunbelt Billy's last stand. Just like General Custer, Matt.
Well, hopefully for him it turns out better than it did for Custer, who got slaughtered at Little Bighorn.
Maybe we could pull that out post-editing there. We don't need Sunbelt Billy and General Custer to be in the same thought process. All right, Matt, those are our big ones of the week, but there are still plenty of intriguing games. Let's hit those intriguing matchups.
Muy caliente. Spicy matchups.
Matt and I love the spicy food, so we hit up a little spicy matchups here, Matt. And I think this one is particularly interesting. So when you and I were out in Hawaii doing the show from the beautiful Sheridan Waikiki. We were keeping our eyes on Iowa State against Kansas State, and you had Iowa State plus the points, and they won the game outright. And Iowa State hasn't lost. They are undefeated going into this showdown at Cincinnati, noon Eastern on ESPN2, Matt. Iowa State lost their 2 top corners. That is a massive loss here for the Cyclones. Jeremiah Cooper, 36 career starts. In totality, Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper, 55 career starts, and they're done for the year. And that's not good when you're facing a Cincinnati pass offense that has just been phenomenal. Brendan Sorsby, 10 touchdowns, 1 pick, over 1,000 yards passing this year, Matt. He's also rushed for 227, which has been impressive. And this Cincinnati offense averaging 8 yards per play. I like Cincinnati, and the market does too. This thing opened up Cincinnati as a dog. They're now the favorite. Find the cheapest money line out there. I think there's minus 120s out there. I saw a little bit of money coming into the market on Cincinnati this week, but just double checking the money lines. I think Cincinnati, this is a noon game, which doesn't make me feel great, but I think there are a couple minus 120s out there, minus 122. I like Cincinnati to win this game. Keep an eye on Dante Corleone, their stud defensive lineman. He missed the last 2 games. I think he's listed as questionable. But this Iowa State offense and defense, if you look at some of the adjusted numbers that my guy Brett Ciancia put out there, 47th amongst P4 teams in adjusted offense and 48th in adjusted defense. I think Cincinnati, especially with those injuries, Matt, should be able to score. And I think they beat Iowa State to lead to this the wackiness that I think all of us expect in the Big 12.
Circa opened Iowa State a 2-point favorite. Like you said, it's flipped to Cincinnati minus 1.5. I've got this game circled on my card, written down on my sheet, and I think I'm going to put Cincinnati on a money line parlay. It's an early start, and if the Bearcats bomb and lose, I'll just have to rebet that parlay with the other teams. But that's a nice cheap favorite to put on there, Tim, where it really increases the value of the parlay if the Bearcats do come through. It's not one of my favorite plays, but that's probably how I'm going to play that Cincinnati side.
Also in the noon window, Matt, maybe the best situational spot of the whole weekend, Illinois at Purdue. And I talked about this on the podcast on Wednesday, Matt. Over the summer, we had a listener say, hey, take a look at this spot. Illinois will play Indiana, USC, and then Ohio State. In the middle will be Barry Odom's squad, Purdue. The 10s are starting to disappear. What do you make of Illinois at Purdue, noon Eastern on Big Ten Network?
What do I make of it? I bet Purdue plus 10. I've had this game circled for a long time, too. And especially because of the Illinois scheduling situation. At Indiana, home against USC, then after Purdue, Ohio State on deck. This is a really tough spot for the Illini. And if you reflect last year, Illinois was a 22.5-point home favorite. Ryan Brown was the quarterback for Purdue, and that was the worst coached Purdue team in the history of the program. You're going back about 120 years. Illinois needed a miracle to win that game 50-49 in overtime. And Ryan Brown had a monster day. That doesn't mean that Brown's going to repeat that against the Illini defense here, but I think Barry Odom's got a legit shot at his first Big Ten win right here. He's off a bye. He's definitely made a difference in this program in a short amount of time. You could see it in the game against Notre Dame last week. Look how bad Purdue looked against Notre Dame a year ago. And then Purdue was far more competitive in the Notre Dame game this year, right? So you want to grade a team not against the cupcakes like Ball State and Southern Illinois. How does Purdue look against a team like Notre Dame? And the offense was capable against the Irish. And it's an Irish defense actually looked pretty good against Arkansas last week. But again, Purdue's 15-5 in the last 20 meetings between these teams. This is one conference rivalry where Purdue's typically gotten the better of Illinois and has had the upper hand. I love the fact that Barry Odom's off the bye, and I think Purdue's going to be a live dog here. I took the 10 early in the week. I think the 10 might come back. I see 9.5 at most spots. I believe the South Point in Las Vegas still got 10 on this game as we speak. But I'm also going to put a little on the money line. Tim, I'm going to have a little money line parlay on a couple of dogs. And Florida and Purdue will be on that ticket.
Like it. Little long shots. I like it. I'm with you. Another common play for us. We talked about it Tuesday night on VSiN Primetime, which you can catch every weeknight from 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Matt. Situationally, great spot for Purdue. Illinois next week gets Ohio State coming off of the come-from-behind win over USC. Great call by you, by the way, last week on Illinois, catching the points. They win the game outright. So great spot for Purdue, and I think you summed it up. So I'm on Purdue as well. Let's hopefully get those 10s back, but a common play for us there. Let's stay in the noon window, Matt. This game might have been part of the main course if we did this podcast in August, but we're doing this in October, and both of these teams have been enormous disappointments so far. That's Clemson at North Carolina, Matt. And here we sit, Clemson, who has just been an absolute disaster, now laying 14 and a half at a prominent national shop at North Carolina, Matt. Sounds like Max Johnson going to get the start for UNC. What do you have in Chapel Bill Sunday or Saturday afternoon?
It's not going to be called Chapel Bill that much longer. I don't know how long he's going to stay as North Carolina coach. Will he last to year 2? I'm not sure, but I wouldn't bet on him being there more than 2 years. And this is a big game for Belichick. It really is, because the negativity is going to be off the charts if the Tar Heels get blown out in this game. I was just on ESPN Radio Baton Rouge with Jimmy Ott, and Jimmy's laying the 14 with Clemson. I'm taking a 14 with North Carolina. We talked – how many times over how many years do we talk about you give Bill Belichick extra time to prepare and he's money? He's off a bye week. He's off an embarrassing loss. He's had extra time to prep for this Clemson offense, which, by the way, has all sorts of problems. Cade Klubnik, another guy like Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, who's supposed to be a Heisman candidate, has put up underwhelming numbers so far. Klubnik has 6 TD passes and 4 picks. This North Carolina team's got a talent deficit. There's no doubt about it. And that's what Michael Lombardi and Bill Belichick are going to talk about. Hey, we got to upgrade the talent in the program. We had less than a year to work with, blah, blah, blah. But that said, Max Johnson's a veteran quarterback who can step in, manage the offense, keep the Tar Heels in it. Belichick's got a decent amount of talent. And if he's got anything left as a coach, off a bad loss with a bye week to prepare for this Clemson offense that's been sputtering, I think Carolina should stay in this game. It's to me, it feels a little bit risky, kind of like the Florida State play, but I'm going to play Carolina. I'm actually looking at the screen. There was a 14.5 out there. I didn't bet it yet because I thought maybe I might be able to get 14.5 or 15. I think FanDuel had the 14.5, and I don't have FanDuel. I don't have a FanDuel app right now. But Tim, bottom line is I'm taking 14 or more with Belichick here.
Clemson I guess they were off last week, 2 weeks ago, Matt. That is one of the most embarrassing performances I've seen of that program, to get absolutely punked by Syracuse like they did. Yeah. And that was a wild loss. As a 17.5-point favorite to get absolutely manhandled was pretty
terrible.
Stunning. All right, let's go to the 3:30 window, Matt. You're going to take a big dog in UNC. I was waiting to see if 21 would show up, and it has. I'm going to take 21 with Boise State here against Notre Dame. I think this is a really intriguing game. Two teams that were in the playoff a year ago. Obviously, a lot of defections from their rosters off to the NFL. Ashton Genty moves on to the NFL with the Raiders. Notre Dame loses a lot of key pieces on the defensive side of the ball. But I think this number is just a bit inflated. And Notre Dame, I was really impressed and have been impressed by the offense, Matt, these last 3 games against Texas A&M, against Purdue, and then last week against Arkansas. CJ Carr has been tremendous. The weapons that he has at his disposal have been top-notch. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price in the backfield, Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse. They've got a ton of weapons out there, and I think Notre Dame certainly has the ability to run the table here and go 10-2. I look at Boise State, Matt. I think they've obviously been a bit underwhelming. The game that we all saw them lose week 1 against South Florida, but they tend to get up for these big games. And if you look at the look-ahead line, it was 15.5, and now it's 21 at DraftKings, and that's what I was waiting for. And I'm going to take the 21. A year ago, Boise State was a 17.5-point dog at Oregon and should have won the game. Now, I don't think that team is going to show up on Saturday. I think Notre Dame should win, but I don't think Notre Dame's defensive woes got fixed last week against Arkansas, even though they played better. I just think this is a big number, and something kind of interesting popped out to me. I don't think Notre Dame will overlook Boise State, Matt, but Marcus Freeman against unranked G5 teams is 1-6 against the spread with two losses, Marshall and Northern Illinois a year ago. I think Boise State keeps this thing competitive, and I'll take the 21. I think there is a correlation, though, Matt. If you like Boise plus the points, I think there is a correlation to the under, even though both of these defenses have struggled. But I'll take the 21. Not my favorite bet, but I think once 21 showed up, I had to take a little nibble on the Broncos in South Bend on Saturday.
Yeah, I would say going forward, I understand taking a big dog. Be careful betting against the Fighting Irish because I want to note it for the record that I said they were going to win 10 games in a row and get to 10-2 and be a playoff team, while the doomsday sayers like Brad Powers were predicting the Irish would get eliminated by Arkansas a week ago. What was that score? It was 56-13. And this Irish team's got something to prove now. And Kirk Herbstreit said this on ESPN College Game Day a couple weeks ago. And I agreed with Herbstreit at the time. And Nick Saban pointed out the schedule. He said, look, even if Notre Dame goes 10-2 and they run the table, they're not going to have any wins over ranked opponents. So is that going to be enough to get the Irish in? And Herbstreit said, yes. At 10-2, Notre Dame's going to be a playoff team. And I completely agree. And I think one of the reasons Notre Dame's going to be a playoff team at 10-2 is going to be the margin of victory over these opponents. I think the Irish are going to steamroll these teams, and they're going to prove a point. And when you don't have ranked opponents on your schedule, you got to beat the opponents by a significant margin. And I don't think Marcus Freeman's going to lay off the gas in some of these games. They're going to put up big numbers. And I mentioned to you that C.J. Carr, the freshman quarterback, showed me something in the fourth quarter of the Miami game. I thought he was handcuffed by the play calling in the first three quarters. When he was allowed to play in the fourth quarter, so that this kid's got a chance to be pretty good. And I really like this Notre Dame offense. And I don't have a play on this game. I don't lay big numbers like this. But if I did play it, I'd probably be like you. I'd probably take the points with Boise. But I'm going to say be careful betting against the Irish because I think they're going to storm through the South like General Sherman did way back when.
I definitely agree. I think there is some style points that are needed for Notre Dame and some cheering for Texas A&M and cheering for Miami, certainly for the Irish as this year goes on, Matt. A couple quick notes about this game before we move on. This will be the biggest point spread against Boise State since 1999 when they played UCLA. That was pointed out by Brad Powers on Twitter. Notre Dame, number 3, Matt, in adjusted passing offensive efficiency. That is something we don't hear all that often. More often than not, these good Notre Dame teams have kind of been ground and pound, but C.J. Carr, to your point, has looked awesome, and I've been blown away by how well he has played. So if he can avoid the mistakes, this could be a hold on to your butt situation there on Saturday against Boise, who certainly has some concerns. They have some playmakers, and I think they'll be able to make some plays, but I'll take the 21 with Boise here in this spot. And then lastly, Matt, in this 3:30 window, we mentioned Virginia already in their big win over Florida State. They go on the road to Louisville, and I know Jeff Brom is a coach that both you and I really like. And Louisville, even though they're unblemished right now, they've shown a little bit of vulnerabilities so far. They've got a bye week upcoming, and then they host Miami on a Friday night. So thankfully, this isn't a look ahead. I just think this is a massive letdown spot. And Virginia, they get into the top 25, Matt. Tony Elliott gets a program-defining win, and I'm very curious to see how this team bounces back after beating Florida State, charging the field, everything going right. Louisville's getting a little bit healthier. I know they were fortunate to come back and beat Pitt last week and get the cover, but I'm just going to play against a classic letdown spot. So I mentioned earlier that Alabama will be in a money line parlay for me, Matt. This is who I will pair them with. Louisville to Alabama money line parlay. Right now, if you put that together at FanDuel, if you have that ability nationally, that's minus 121. Louisville minus 215 on the money line. Alabama minus $4. So I think that's a pretty good price for this. I just think this is a really tricky spot for Virginia to get off the mat after that incredible win. Maybe their biggest win in I don't know how long. Does it go back to the Florida State win 30 years ago? So Tony Elliott, no doubt his biggest win as the head coach of Virginia, and we'll see how they bounce back. But I'm a fan of Miller Moss. I think they got weapons there at Louisville, and I think this is a really tricky spot for Virginia. So, Matt, my money line parlay, Alabama to Louisville. Louisville at home, 3:30 Eastern on ESPN2 against Virginia.
Yeah, I could buy into that. In fact, I've got Louisville written down as a team I want to put on a money line parlay this week. Don't want to lay the points, but I like the Cardinals to win. They're catching Virginia in a great spot, like you said, off the Cavs off the big win, storm the field. Now you hit the road the next week. That's a perfect spot for the home favorite. And Jeff Brom's a coach I believe in anyway. Cardinals have faced pretty weak competition up to this point. Needed a big comeback to beat Pittsburgh, 34-27 on the road a week ago. Miller Moss passed for 339 in that game, by the way. And the game of the year in the ACC is coming up Friday, October 17th, Louisville at Miami. So think about that. Circle that on your calendar as well. Miller Moss has been pretty good, but not great so far in this Jeff Brom offense. But I'm like you. I like the Cards to win. I'm not going to bet on them to cover. I'm just going to put the Cards on a money line parlay.
All right, Matt, before we hit some best of the rest games and run through a couple more bets that we have, just a reminder that every broadcast of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Rainbow Authentics, the official source of game-used apparel, autographs, trading cards for your favorite Hawaii student athletes. Every item tells a story, whether it's a game-worn jersey, a signed ball, or unique collectibles. You're capturing the moment and owning a piece of Hawaii sports history. Beyond memorabilia, Rainbow Authentics is committed to supporting the community. Their mission is rooted in empowering student athletes and coaches, strengthening local programs, and giving back to Hawaii with pride. With exclusive custom gear, Rainbow Authentics also makes sure you look your best every game day or on most podcasts, because I'm usually rocking my Rainbow Authentics hat. So check it out, rainbowauthentics.com. Mahalo to our friends over at Rainbow Authentics, a proud sponsor of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. All right, Matt, let's hit the rest of the Week 6 slate. We'll kind of power through these, maybe a cliff note here or there. Wisconsin at Michigan. I know you said you like a lot of home dogs this week. I was curious if you would take the Badgers plus the big old number, 17.5. Badgers in a desperate spot there for Luke Fickell coming off the bye at Michigan. This will be the big noon game on Fox this upcoming weekend.
Tim, you know why the Badgers are in a desperate spot? Because they're bad, and they've taken bad losses, including a 27-10 home loss to Maryland. That's inexcusable. Danny O'Neill, little Danny, started a quarterback for the Badgers in that game 2 weeks ago. But when is the last time you remember Wisconsin getting plastered at home by an opponent other than, let's say, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, or when Alabama rolled in last year? You don't lose by 17 at home to Maryland and Mike Locksley. So no, I've seen enough. I've bailed on the Badgers. I probably won't take them in any spots the rest of the year.
Kansas State's at Baylor. This is also a noon game. Maybe Kansas State showing a little bit of life last week. That was one of the old fishy lines as Kansas State was a 6-point favorite. They went out and won and took care of business. We've seen a little bit of love in the market here for Kansas. Actually, no, it's up to 6.5. I was looking at the wrong line. So Baylor, 6.5-point favorite. I'm a big fan of Sawyer Robertson, one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football. Matt, let's go 3:30 out to the Rose Bowl. How does Penn State bounce back after the loss to Oregon? They have to go out to LA. It'll be a very sleepy atmosphere, 12:30 local kick. UCLA firing another coach this week, Tino Sunseri. Talk about a poor choice by him, leaving Indiana to go to UCLA, and he gets fired by the start of October, Matt. This is a bad football team at UCLA. However, they did cover last week at Northwestern, Matt. Does Penn State have a letdown here as a 24.5-point favorite at UCLA, or does Bully James go out there and bully UCLA?
Well, I'm glad you used that word. That's what I was going to mention. James Franklin is a classic bully, and so I don't want to bet against him here. If he's got a chance to pile on, he probably will. Tim Skipper is the interim coach for UCLA, and he's got Jerry Neuheisel, the son of Rick, as his offense coordinator now. And I don't know. This is a type of spot where I would typically like to take the dog, but Tim, it's going to be mostly Penn State fans, you would think, at the Rose Bowl, right? Even after the loss to Oregon, Penn State fans are faithful. They're going to travel. And who doesn't want to travel to Pasadena, to the greatest venue in college football on a Saturday afternoon? I think that there's a chance Penn State probably wins this game 52-14 or something like that. I haven't seen enough from UCLA to say, hey, this is going to be a live dog. It's not going to be a rabid crowd. The coaching staff is stripped down. And the best case you can make for UCLA here is that Penn State's in a letdown spot off a deflating loss to Oregon. That's the best case you can make for UCLA, so I'm not going to make it.
This is a great situational spot for Maryland, but the number to me is just a little too short. The Terps are home to Washington, Matt. Washington's last two games, the Apple Cup, where they got revenge. They smacked Washington State. Damon Williams looked awesome. And then last week, massive spot against the number one team in the country. They come up empty in a physical battle. Now you got to travel across the country. Matt, this initially was on my card. I am not going to give it out as an official play. If we get back to 7, I'll probably take a little piece of Maryland. It is a great spot for the Terps here at home against Washington off of that loss to Ohio State. Maryland off a bye as well. I do like what I've seen from the freshman QB, Malik Washington, but I'm going to pass on this one. But I think Maryland in an interesting spot. Any interest in the Terps here in a letdown spot potentially for Washington?
Yeah, the Terps, one of the teams I had circled early in the week, but I was at 6.5. I wanted 7, and I've got to get 7 if I'm going to bet Maryland here. Like you said, tough spot for Washington, traveling cross-country off a deflating loss to Ohio State. And there were 2 plays in that game against the Buckeyes that really disappointed me. One was Jed Fish with the 4th and long, the fake field goal that had zero chance of working. What was Jed Fish thinking with that fake field goal attempt against Ohio State? And then probably the softest, weakest roughing the passer call you're going to see the entire season that went against Washington and basically put Ohio State in the end zone and helped turn that game. It turned a 7-3 game into a 14-3 game and then went south from there. But I was disappointed in Washington's offense. I didn't like the play calling. Way too many times Damon Williams was stuck in the pocket when you need to move the pocket, let him roll out and make plays. He's a mobile quarterback. A lot of things to be disappointed in with Washington last week. That said, I still like this team, but I hate this spot. It'd be Maryland plus 7 or pass, and their 7's just not out there right now.
Yeah, let's see if we do get a little public support hitting the betting market here at some point. Another game I just want to mention, big for the win total, Nebraska at home against Michigan State. This feels like a little tricky of a spot here. Jonathan Smith's team catching 11.5. Matt, a game that I also had circled, haven't bet it yet. Willie Fritz is a massive dog here at home. Houston coming off of a game last Friday night. They were down 2 touchdowns to Oregon State. They look like dead to rights. They score a couple of late touchdowns. They ultimately win that game in overtime. And Texas Tech coming off a bye week after they took care of business in Salt Lake City. Very impressive performance by Texas Tech. Baron Morton will be back. He was injured in that Utah game, so he will be back for the Red Raiders here. I was looking at the dog. I was having a hard time making the case for them, but normally I do love to back Willie Fritz in this dog role. It is worth noting that the look-ahead line was 8.5, and now we're at 11.5. So could be a late addition to the card, maybe on Saturday, Matt, if I look for some puppy love. This game at 7 o'clock on ESPN, but Houston catching 11.5 at home. Not one of the home dogs that you were looking at, huh?
Well, Ryan Hyatt, our buddy, radio host in Lubbock, Texas, told me he thinks the Red Raiders could roll in this game, win big. I looked at Houston, underwhelmed, obviously, by the Cougars' performance against Oregon State a week ago. But I love home dogs, and Houston was one I considered. I decided to pass, as Ryan Hyatt's actually been right about pretty much everything he said about Texas Tech football so far this season, and he thinks it's going to be a blowout, so I passed.
All right. 2 games, Matt, on the night slate that I just want to quickly glance over. 2 big favorites. Ohio State at home against Minnesota. That game at 7:30 on NBC, and then Texas A&M against Mississippi State. I'm curious, in the markets betting Texas A&M, Matt, this Mississippi State team has been very feisty at home. We had them against Arizona State last week. They were right there with Tennessee. They are vastly improved, this Mississippi State team is, but this feels like a really bad spot for them heading to College Station. If you look at the betting market right now, number is continuing to creep up here in favor of Texas A&M. I even see one shop out to 16.5, which seems pretty aggressive, but this number blew through 14 and hasn't stopped. So it does feel like the market is big on Texas A&M here in this spot. And then Ohio State coming off of the win against Washington. They have Illinois on deck. Their defense is the real deal. Number sitting at 23.5 here for the Buckeyes. Feels like a game where Minnesota will really struggle to score anything. So 2 primetime games, 2 big favorites at home, Ohio State, Minnesota, and Mississippi State, Texas A&M.
How about the Texas A&M defense and what it did to the Auburn offense a week ago? Tim, those numbers for the Auburn offense were embarrassing. And that's after Jackson Arnold took, 10 sacks in the game at Oklahoma? We have a listener to the podcast, Jeff G, at Give Me That Hook, who says he's got a nickname for Hugh Freeze. He wants us to refer to him going forward as High School Hugh. So take that submission, Tim, and remember that next time we talk about an Auburn game. I am not going to play that one. I did want to play Minnesota. There's a 24 out there on Minnesota at Ohio State. But when I read the injury report for Minnesota, it's going to keep me off that game. I'm not sure if the Gophers have any healthy running backs for this game. So that's going to keep me off that side for now.
You mentioned the Texas A&M Auburn game. Auburn was outgained 414 to 117, 0 of 12 on third downs. Yikes. That was not a great performance. And depending on what number you got, Auburn actually covered some 6.5s out there. All right, Matt, the Stormy Special, late night, 10:30 Eastern Time, ESPN. Our colleague Stormy Bonantoni, she'll be on the sidelines there, and she'll get another opportunity to see our guy, Jaron Kiave Sangapulatelli, as the Cal Golden Bears, similar to the spot 3 weeks ago against Minnesota, a 3-point home dog against the Duke Blue Devils. Are you taking the Cal Golden Bears as the home dog?
Hey, can Stormy do it for us again? The last time she went up to Berkeley, when the Golden Bears were home dogs to Minnesota, I said, Stormy, I'm on Cal +3, bring it home. And she did. Cal got the win. Now we need Stormy to come through twice. You know what's interesting about this Cal team, Tim? After the 34-0 loss at San Diego State, Cal fell behind 14-0 at Boston College. Excuse me. Allergies hit me this week. So Cal went through a stretch there where it was outscored 48-0. The Golden Bears did bounce back from that 14-0 deficit at BC and got the win. And our favorite quarterback, or one of our favorite quarterbacks, passed for 254 last week to help the Bears get that win. You know what? There was a lot of sharp money on Cal in that game at BC a week ago. And I'll mention this again. I really like this Cal coaching staff. Justin Wilcox, Nick Rolovich, Brian Harsin. I believe in these guys. Which Darian Mensah are we going to get for Duke? You know, that's a question. And it's a late kickoff time for the Blue Devils. We talk about body clock games for West Coast teams going east with the early starts. I don't think it's as much of a factor for an East Coast team going west, kicking off late at night like this. But I do think there is a home field advantage for Cal. And I thought you saw that the last time they were at home against Minnesota. I thought it was a lively crowd, and the Golden Bears defense played really well that night against Minnesota. Not my favorite play of the week, but I am going to play Cal +3 here.
Yeah, I'm going to be with you here. I mean, for Duke, think about this stretch they've had here, Matt. This will be their 6th straight game where they're either a 3-point underdog to a 4.5-point favorite. Every game they've played so far this year has been a toss-up. Well, the last 6 games of the season, you had Illinois catching 2.5, Tulane catching 1.5, at home to NC State, 3.5-point favorites. Last week, 4.5-point favorites, and now against Cal. So I guess that's 5 straight games. They had their season opener where they're a massive favorite. I think for Cal at home, as you mentioned, Justin Wilcox has really thrived in this underdog role. 14-5-1 ATS as a home dog, 32-20-1 as a dog straight up, home or away. So yeah, I'm curious to see where this market goes. We've seen the 2.5s go down. There was a 3.5 on Sunday, I think, that went away very quickly, but I took 3 with Cal. That'll be a best bet for me. And being at home here against this Duke team, 6th straight game for both of these teams. So they're very much looking forward to the bye week here. But I was impressed by what I saw from Cal and the way they battled and came back against BC, albeit not a very good BC team, but you're on the road, tricky spot, and they get a big turnover late in that game to win 28-24. All right, Matt, before we wrap things up and give our best bet recap, I did want to hit a little Mountain West minute. You and I love to bet the Mountain West and conference that you and I know well. So we have 2 Friday night games. New Mexico is at San Jose State, Matt, and this number's sitting at 2.5. San Jose State so far this year, I would say, has been one of the bigger disappointments in my eyes. Week 1 loss to Central Michigan as a 2-touchdown favorite. How did they blow that game to Stanford last week? And then New Mexico, you could argue this team has been one of the more surprising teams. Jason Eck goes down there, and he's done a phenomenal job with the Lobos. Lobos catching 2.5, Matt. This is a spot where the market has probably reacted to what we've seen from New Mexico so far, but man, it's hard to lay anything with San Jose State from what we've seen to this point.
San Jose State's been a disappointment, that's for sure. 1-3 so far, now 1 win. It needed a last-minute field goal to beat Idaho up there in San Jose. I watched a lot of the San Jose-Stanford game a week ago, and I had Stanford on the money line, Stanford -2.5, and Stanford should not have won that game, Tim. Walker Eaget passed for 473 yards. Stanford overcame a late deficit to win 30-29. And, Tim, I mentioned this to you last night. The Cardinal had a chance to cover the 2.5 late. There was a 2-point conversion attempt. It was a wide receiver screen, and it was blocked perfectly. If the wide receiver just catches the ball, he could walk into the end zone, and he drops the ball. And it was, to be honest, it was put in a bad place because it hit him right in the hands. But he dropped it, and he could have walked into the end zone, and Stanford would have covered and won the game 32-29. But how about the numbers put up by the quarterbacks in that game? Ben Gilbranson, 444 yards passing against that San Jose defense. I'm considering playing New Mexico here. Eck could be a rising star as a coach. He's doing a great job with Lobos. Really good hire. And if that San Jose State defense can give up 444 yards passing to Ben Gilbranson, that's a red flag. So it's going to be New Mexico or pass for me in that one.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine Wisconsin, if they do fire Luke Fickell, will have higher hopes, but Jason Eck did play offensive line once upon a time at Wisconsin. So if they have to go down their Rolodex, I'm sure he wouldn't say no to going back to his alma mater. Jack Lang has been an impressive quarterback. He's come in, or Jack Lane, I beg your pardon. The transfer coming in from Idaho has been impressive. So that'll be a fun game to watch on Friday night. And then also on Friday, I don't know if this game will be fun at all, Matt, because San Diego State, that was painful. That was just miserable watching that game. Both you and I had Northern Illinois. I thought Northern Illinois would be in a great spot to beat San Diego State. But the defense showed up. This San Diego State team defensively is legit, and they take on Colorado State. Matt, I don't know if there's been a quarterback who has fallen further than Braden Fowler Nicolosi. He got benched. He is no longer the starter for Colorado State. So this is ugly. Total 41. San Diego State, I think, is a decent money line parlay team. We had Joshua Nunn at Step on a Duck 1 on prime time. He likes San Diego State laying the chalk here. So San Diego State, if you want to throw them with Alabama, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I think the Aztecs should take care of the Colorado State Rams. This team has fallen off a bunch here, Matt.
Tim, I've already got San Diego State on Moneyline Parlay. I put it in yesterday at the Red Rock Sportsbook. I said Aztecs should win this game. I do not trust them to cover 1 point or 1.5 points. Let's put it that way. And I watched a lot of that San Diego State Northern Illinois game last week too, and I don't like to admit that because it was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. Every time I looked up, it was 3-0 or 3-3, and then the Aztecs somehow got a field goal to win the game 6-3. And I was kicking myself because, like an idiot, I took 2.5 with Northern Illinois, and I thought about betting the under and didn't bet the under. And that was one of the best bets on the card that day was the under in that game. I think is it Jackson Brousseau who got the start for Colorado State last week, and he led the Rams to a whopping 3 points in the loss to Washington State. So you and I talked about this, I think, off the record during Mountain West Media Days that Colorado State was going to be a fade team this season, and it certainly played out that way. I didn't like this team coming into the season. I like this team a lot less now. This is a game the Aztecs absolutely have to win. If you can beat Cal 34-0 at home, you got to be able to beat this fading Colorado State team on Friday night in San Diego. Tim, the Rams are 1-3. The one win came against Northern Colorado. Look up your point spread log. I meant to do this before the podcast, so I forgot. But I believe Colorado State was about a 30-point favorite in that game in Fort Collins. And there was a controversial replay review in the fourth quarter of that game that took a touchdown away from Northern Colorado. And excuse me. Someone who was watching the game told me there's no way the call should have been overturned. It should have been a touchdown for Northern Colorado. There was no video evidence there to take that TD away. Northern Colorado should have won that game, ended up losing 21-17, and that's the only win the Rams have in the month of September.
35 was the total, or was the spread,
35.
Matt, in that game. 35 points.
That's a 35-point underdog. Sorry, that's a 35-point underdog that should have won the game that got robbed on a replay reversal. But nobody really talked about it or reported it because it's such a low-profile game, and very few people were watching it, right?
Yeah, this is a big one for San Diego State, though. I mean, think about the year that they had last year, how tough they had for Sean Lewis in year one, going just 3-9. They brought back a ton on the defense, and if they can get to 4-1, Matt, they're in decent shape to make a bowl game here this year. All right, couple games on Saturday I just wanted to glance over with Mountain West teams. Air Force goes to Navy. This is the first leg of the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. This will be a noon kick on CBS. I was reading through Brad Power's newsletter. Since 2005, Academy unders are 46-12-2. Now, I will say, Matt, as we watched Hawaii and Air Force last Saturday, and we were on the wrong side of that one, this Air Force defense is awful, just terrible. And Navy can have some explosive plays. The total sits at 52.5. Man, this is a pretty high total, but that Air Force defense, it's stunning how bad that Air Force defense is.
Micah Alejado, off the worst game probably of his life against Fresno the week before, came back and passed for 457 against the Air Force defense last week. I was half right, half wrong in that game a week ago. Laid the points with Air Force. Thought it was a really good spot for the Falcons. Lost that. also played over the total of 53 and a half, I think, and there's 79 points scored, so I got that part of it right. But Air Force allowed 535 yards to the Hawaii offense in that game, Tim. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, that was a bad bet by me on Air Force. I thought it was a tricky spot for Hawaii, but a good win for the Hawaii win total. So I'll take a little bit of happiness there. All right, before we get to the best bet recap, Matt, I did want to look at one last home dog that might make my card. Their offense is terrible. Wyoming at home against UNLV. How about this weather forecast for Saturday in Laramie? 50%, 50 degrees, then down to the 40s, 15 to 25 mile an hour winds throughout, and a quarter inch of rain about the 5 hours leading up to the game, Matt, and some rain off and on throughout the contest. That is going to be a crappy weather night, and you wonder how UNLV will fare in that one. Number 3.5, Wyoming could make the card. It won't be an official play. I don't trust that offense, but that just feels like, as you've watched enough Mountain West football in your life, that feels like one of those weird games where it's 16-12 in the fourth quarter in Laramie.
Yeah, there's no question. It's the toughest travel spot in the Mountain West, really. And especially when the weather comes into play, it can be one of the toughest road games in the conference. And, you know, I want to play Wyoming here, but I actually watched the tape of the Utah-Wyoming game a few weeks ago, and it was 3-0 at halftime. Utes had the lead. It ended up blowing it open. They won 31-6. This Wyoming offense is really, really bad. And that's why I'm hesitating on this play right now. I've got it written down as a potential play here for Wyoming catching 3.5, but I haven't bet it. I'm not sure if I will, but if I play it, it'll definitely be the home dog here because of the travel spot and the weather up in Wyoming on Saturday. I also think, excuse me again, I also think we don't know for sure how good this Rebels team is right now. I think they're pretty good. But they really haven't been tested, Tim. If you look at the opponents on the UNLV schedule so far, it's been a pretty weak schedule. And I'm not saying Wyoming is a step up in class either, but I'm not sold on this UNLV team yet. And what's interesting, starting with Barry Odom, UNLV has got a very impressive track record on the road the last 3 years. And I've lived in Vegas for over 2 decades, and this UNLV team couldn't win a game on the road for a long time. And now the Rebels have been road warriors, actually, the last few years. Anyway, talking a lot about a game I'm going to pass on. If I do play it, it'll be the home dog.
All right, that's enough of that chatter, Matt. Let's recap our best bets.
Best bets recap.
All right, Matt, let's start with you. You've got 5 bets on the card for official bets here in week number 6.
All right, last week, 4-1. That's 16, 12, and 2 for the season. I got 5 plays this week. So a smaller card right now. I am going to have a lot more plays by Saturday. But let's go North Carolina, plus 14. Belichick off a bad loss, off a bye. You got to hang in there as a home dog, Bill. Purdue, plus 10. Florida, plus 7. I'm going to take Sunbelt Billy in the points. I think the Gators and the Boilermakers both live to win those games. So Purdue and Florida. Let's also go Florida State plus 4.5 against Miami. And my 5th home dog on the card, the Cal Golden Bears plus 3 on Saturday night in Berkeley.
All right, couple common plays there, but I'll start with the hold on to your butt special, Boise State plus 21. Matt, you made valid points that Notre Dame could be on a warpath to try to impress folks with an offense that is very impressive. But once we got to 21, which is out there at DraftKings, felt like that was just too far. So I think Boise State can hang for a little while there in South Bend, plus 21. Common plays with Purdue and Florida with me and you, and Cal, plus 10 with Purdue, plus 7 with Florida, plus 3 with Cal. I really like Cincinnati in their spot at home against Iowa State. I hate that it's an early start time, as we've discussed ad nauseum here on the podcast, but find the cheapest money line out there on Cincinnati. I think it's minus 120-ish right now. I bet it at minus 120. And then a money line parlay, Matt. We're going to go Alabama Really like them in this spot here against Vanderbilt. Just don't love laying the 10.5, but I still may end up getting there. But I'll pair them up with Louisville in a massive letdown spot for Virginia. You and I are both big fans of Jeff Brom and Miller Moss. So give me Louisville, Alabama, moneyline parlay. Last week, 5-4, 17-16-1 on the year. So hoping to have a big week here, Matt, and get those numbers boosted up a little bit here. But that's going to do it for the podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe, whether it's on Spotify or iTunes. We also have our YouTube channel up and running, 3 episodes every week. Hit that subscribe button there on YouTube, youtube.com/college football betting podcast. For Matt Youmans, I'm Tim Murray. Thanks to Wyatt Tomchek, as well as Ryan Hunter, our producers of this podcast. This has been the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.